I'm Demita Jolyn, and you are plugged into She Kings. This podcast is created by Black women for Black women leaders, healers, and entrepreneurs who are ready to show up in a way that feels deeply authentic, connected, and as big and as powerful as you know you are. This podcast is for you if you want the tools and mindset to create a life and business free from self-consciousness, hustle culture, and old school conditioning that tells us success looks just one way. Let's usher in the new earth where embodying your you-ness is your birthright, and where Black women get to be powerful, seen, joyful, and free in everything we do. For the culture, for the ancestors. Let's get it.
Welcome to She Kings, everyone. We are back, and I'm so excited. It's funny because it's like we're putting some oil on some wheels because this has been a while since we've done a podcast, but we are here, and we're so excited to connect with you again under a new vibe, a new look, a new energy. So it's going to be great. So I am Allie Duncan, and I am a She King. And what do I have? What do I have to focus on? I have so many little things that I'm focusing on, but I'm going to focus on that I own the only Black-owned yoga studio in Colorado. And so I'm excited to be here to connect with all of you lovely queens. And those of you who are in Denver or Colorado, you can absolutely come see me. So I'm glad that I'm here.
Well, I'm glad that you're here as well, Allie. My name is Demita, and I am a She King as well. And my work in the world is to really step into my voice as a Black woman, to really understand who I am as a Black woman and the messages that I'm meant to share. And for me, that is about being willing to expose myself, be vulnerable, and to show myself in a way that I am healing, right? Because I know that I'm not doing this on my own. And so that is my purpose, and to connect with all of you. So thank you for being here. And thank you for welcoming me to the She Kings.
Right? We have got to acknowledge that.
Yes. Yes.
Welcome,
Yes.
Demita. This
Yes.
is so exciting.
Yes. Yes.
Oh gosh. Now back to another familiar voice. Demita's voice is going to become more and more familiar. I am Erica Danielle. And what can I say? I'm an ex-lawyer. I'm an ex-lawyer. I worked at big law firms before I left my career about over a decade ago. And my focus in this world is helping to bring the new paradigm, the new reality to fruition as a coach, as a speaker, as a lover of humanity. So that is my world. And you can find us on Instagram. You can learn a lot more about each of us. And you can find us individually. So you can find us the She Kings podcast community, and you can find us under our individual names, and we will put all of that in the show notes. With that, I'm going to hand it over to beautiful Demita. She's going to tell you what we're going to be talking about today. She already got into it with her introduction.
Indeed, I did. Vulnerability. It is the word of the year. It is the word of the century. Today we'll be talking about vulnerability and what it means, what vulnerability means, and how we can use it to support us in our business, in our lives. We also will be diving into how we each show up in our vulnerability and how we use it to help us to make money, help us to connect with you all here, and help us to just be better humans. And so we're excited to dive into the topic. We are aware that it can be a big lift in a sense, right? But we're here to normalize it. So as we are in conversation, please join in, drop in chat in the chat. Can they drop in the chat? Should I cut that out? Is there anything they can do? No, because we're live. That's what's up.
This is happening right now. So you all please go and comment on Instagram. Please go and rate us and leave a review on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you might find us.
Absolutely. Thank you for walking us through that, Erica. So that's a part of being vulnerable, right? Like not always knowing exactly what to say. And so you will see us fumble a little bit. You will see me fumble, and that's okay. And it's exactly how we invite you to show up. So here we are talking about vulnerability. We welcome you.
Oh, let me tell you something. Look at God, universe, source, whatever it is you call it, whatever it is it goes by for you. Because I mean, the first real question is, what is vulnerability?
Yes.
And I mean, spot on is that it's letting yourself without filter, for me, without filter, say what you got to say.
Yes.
It is one of the big things that I always say to my clients when I talk about, I don't call it vulnerability, but what I say to them is, hey, you got to take the lead. You got to go first. You want you to, so a lot of my clients are also coaches, they're speakers, they are healers, and they want to share their unique gift with the world. And they come to me and they're like, oh, well, I want to get more clients, or people aren't responding. And I'm like, go first.
Yes.
Go first. Are you willing to show up and choose yourself? Do you believe in what you offer? Are you willing to put your face out there, to put your words out there and say, hey, this is who I am and this is what I think. And people might not like that. When my clients come to me and they're in relationship with a human and they're like, well, it's not working, or doing online dating, I'm like, go first. You're trying to hold back and see if they like you, and then if they like you, then you're trying to hold back, and if your client might be interested in, go first. Are you interested? Are you interested in you? Are you interested in the person in front of you? And are you willing to be seen without any support, without any reason to believe that they might also be interested? Are you willing to be seen?
That's it.
Interested.
That's it.
And open, and like, I like you, like a heart in your hands. I like you. Do you like me? Do you want to keep this going? Do you want to connect in some way? What do y'all think of what is vulnerability for y'all?
Yes. Ali.
Yeah, that one spoke to me because it's rejection.
Oof.
Right. So when you're vulnerable,
Yes.
there's a chance that you may be rejected. And that's with everything, with relationships. That's with your business. This is what I love to do. No one's going to buy that. Everybody's going to think that's silly, but it's like, it's a part of you. It's a passion. And so, man, vulnerability and rejection. So when we guard ourselves and we don't put ourselves first, then we can we're reading the external world to see how we can show up to be safe. And it's funny to me because the external world is matching you, right? So when you say, if you want people to connect with you, then you have to connect first. If you want people to be interested in what you have to share, then you have to share it. Yeah. And so, man, when you were talking, like I was getting anxiety and I'm just like, I don't know if I want to go first.
It is such a good,
but because nobody likes to be said, to be told no. Yeah. Like nobody, like, I like you. Well, I don't like you. This is my passion. Your passion's stupid, right? Nobody likes that, but man, it's working through that, and that builds your internal strength. So that's me working through my vulnerability, right? Like sharing, this is how I feel, and being okay with this is how I feel, not saying this is how I feel because it feels comfortable and that person will accept it, like coming from the masculine side, but being vulnerable is just like, yeah, this is how I feel. So yeah, so that's what vulnerability is to me. And man, I'm telling you, it's a job. It's a full-time job.
It absolutely is a full-time job. When you were both talking, I instantly was reminded of the notes being passed in class, right? Like when you're like, do you like me? And you like check yes, check no. And that in and of itself, like thinking about how vulnerable that is to be like, okay, I'm going to pass this note to this person I like. And there's a huge possibility that they will look at you like, why are you giving this to me? You will be rejected. And so that instantly popped into my mind. And I was like, wow, did I ever get a note? and thinking
Yeah,
about
I was about to
everything
ask.
else. What's that?
I was about to ask who here passed a note or got a note?
I think I've gotten a note.
Did you?
I don't know that I've ever.
I've always seen that on TV. No one ever fucking passed me a note, nor did I ever pass a note.
Well, that's it. You didn't leave. You didn't leave. With the note.
I didn't lead.
I'll pass you a note now, Allie. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
So I love that, like just thinking of that as like when we're even young, like the vulnerability, how it shows up and how we're even unwilling to show up in our vulnerability then. And for me, what comes up for me instantly was trust, right? Like the to trust ourselves in that, right? To trust ourselves to show up in the space as we are and know that we're going to be okay, right? There's this sense of there's just a sense of trust that is calling for our attention when we're talking about vulnerability. And that is willing to trust that, yeah, we might be rejected. We might be told that that we're not liked. People might not like our ideas and our products or whatever it may be. But if we're okay with it, then that's all that really matters, right? In the moment, if we're moving from our essence, if we're moving from our spirit, if we're moving from what is calling to us, then somebody will be touched by it. Somebody will connect with it, and somebody will be moved to move into that vulnerable space as well. And so that's why for me, it's so important to expose myself and to be vulnerable, because I know that I'm not walking this alone. I know that there's somebody like, shit, I've been wanting to say that for so long, but I didn't know that I was, that there was someone else out there that felt this way too. And so I know that it's much bigger than me, right? It's for all of us. It's for the collective. How do we do this together? And we have to start, like Erica said, we lead. We have to be willing to lead.
I wanna say that I love that you made the distinction that when it comes from your heart and from your essence, then then you're taking the lead. Then it's vulnerability. Because a lot of times, and I can say that one of the things that if you can do something wrong, I learned from it. So it wasn't wrong. But a lot of times the fatal flaw of my quote unquote vulnerability or my quote unquote showing up is that I was not leading from my essence and I was not leading from my heart. I was leading from my mind. And then when it wasn't well received, or it wasn't like people weren't racing to my door, like, this is the most profound thing I ever heard.
Yes.
Then I'm just like, well, oh, maybe I should just go back. Like, maybe I should just go sit down. And so I really just love, and we got to put this forward. It's so important to note that vulnerability is when you are dropping out of your supposed to's, you're dropping out of your mind, you're dropping out of these various ideas of what you think people will like Allie was saying, like working from the external, or well, maybe they're like this, maybe they're like that. When you get out of that and you're just like from your belly, from your soul, like, this is what desires to be shared in this moment. This is what desires to come out in this moment. And then you're really showing yourself. Then you're really going first. You're not just dipping your toe in like, oh, maybe people like this. Oh, trying to get the feel of what's going on in this world and how people are responding to you.
Yeah. And then it's also so apparent to me as I've been tapping into the vulnerability world. I like to say, as I've been on my raft and I like inch towards the river, which is vulnerability. And I like, been putting my toes in and then my fingers, and I'm like, nope, the water's too cold. Let me stay on the masculine side and not embrace vulnerability. But the more that I have been in the vulnerability world, like, it does open so much more options. Like, it truly expands you on how you talk to other people. When people start coming to you, like, I know how to process like what they're saying instead of trying to fix it. And Demita's been a big help on that. Like, I'm a fixer. Let's go ahead and let's take your problem, let's fix it, instead of just listening, sharing my experience that might have matched or that was similar. Because then I have to look at that. Then I have to look at it to just be like, oh, yeah, I did go through that and I've been stuffing it down, but now I get to see it And it just expands so many more of your options, who you can reach, how you can show up, your possibilities. And when I started doing that, so much started coming to me as doing coach work and energy work and teaching yoga, right? So you can go down to the mission now. We're being offered to go down to the mission and to the jail to work with these women. But man, being in those spaces, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be open to it. You can't try to fix their problem because there is nothing to fix.
Yeah.
And so that has just been like just expanding everything for the studio too. It's just like, yeah, let's do that. We just don't need people coming into our studio, rolling out their mat and then teaching a class. Like there's so much more to experience when you're vulnerable. Like, yeah, let's go to the homeless shelters. Let's go to the women's prison to teach. And then that just, man, it expands everything. It really does.
It also expands I'll speak for myself. It also expands my feeling of life. So yeah, you end up in the right places and you end up in with the right people, and those right places and the right people may be in the prison with people who are seeking their own internal freedom, right? So I don't want to say that the right places and the right people are these traditional ideas of what right would be, but I think it also, the more vulnerable I am, the more at peace I feel. It's like I can rest better.
That's true.
Because there's not that feeling that something is nagging at me, that the thing I should have said, or the thing I should have done. It is said, it is done. If this is the last breath I take, I did what I was called to do in this moment. And so it's such a relief. And the more you do it, the more expanded your ability to hold emotion, the joy of life, because you are willing to experience rejection.
Yeah.
And when you become willing to experience the shitty shit,
Yeah.
you're willing to experience the pain and the suffering, your capacity for the opposite, it just explodes.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna transition us a little bit. As Black women, showing up vulnerable, I mean, wherever you are in the sort of spiritual, entrepreneurial leadership world, we're talking about vulnerability. But I think we are She Kings. And so we're talking about this with another layer that we can't let go unaddressed.
Yeah.
What do y'all see as some of the differences for y'all having shown up and been in Black spaces and in non-Black centered spaces when we talk about vulnerability and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable?
That's a wow. It's just you asking that question. I was this vulnerability just surged through my whole body, because one of the things that we've talked about together is that because I've always historically moved through the world in the way that I thought people needed me to, right? And obviously that wasn't of my essence. And so it felt constricting. I felt shackled. I felt like I wasn't being true to myself. I wasn't being true to my essence. And so, it was even as simple as being in the languaging. And even as I've been branding myself and really stepping into this work, I have been stuck because I have been expressing in the way that I've always known, which wasn't me. And I thought if I expressed in my vernacular, that people would not understand me, right? And so as I've become more comfortable being and operating from my vulnerability, from the essence of who I am so okay with people saying no, right? But then it's not that I'm going to change myself, the essence of who I am, but it's just navigating how do I show up in a different way that serves all of us, right? And so that for me is a huge part of this vulnerability piece. It's like, just because we're showing up in our essence doesn't mean that people are still going to be like, yes, I am on board, sign me up. But it's being okay within that, because you know that this is the truth of who I am. This is how I speak, right? And the people who can understand me will come. The people who need to hear this message will come. And so, if I answered your question, Erica, I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I think, like, for me, it's that it's being willing to, step into that space of like, this is who I am, and I am okay with that. And I invite you to be in this space with me. But if you're not, that's okay, right? Like, but I am operating from what is of me, of my essence. And that, I think that's our driving force. Like, we continue to come back to our essence, and how do we stand in that? And that's a huge part of being vulnerable. But the more we stand in that, the more we're okay with being vulnerable.
You know what I hear you saying, and I'm gonna sort of filter it through the question, and you tell me if I got it.
Yes.
Because one of the first things you started off talking about was like, if I were to show up and just speak the way I speak, to use my vernacular. There was almost this idea that seemed implicit in what you're saying. Well, I might not be understood. Oh, well, I might not fit. Well, this might not be acceptable in these spaces. And I think that that's something that, Black, white, or otherwise, people can have those thoughts. But I think especially, so first of all, do I have that right? Is that a right reading?
Absolutely. And understanding that those expressions come from me not belonging, feeling like I belong to myself.
There you go.
Yeah.
Which is something that is common for Black folk, for Black women in a society where we are the minority. And there are so many assumptions about, whether we do fit, honestly. And I think about my first year in college. I went to a predominantly white college, lovely school, Catholic school. And I had 5 white women roommates. And one of them was an atheist. And I remember her coming back from class one day and just being like, every day I walk into these classrooms and they have the crucifix above the door. And how am I supposed to feel as an atheist? I just constantly feel shut out. I feel othered. I feel this, I feel that. And I looked at her, I said, girl, don't nobody know you atheist but you. Like, I hear you, and that's fine and everything like that, but you can't cry these tears with all this Black skin in this room. I am sorry, right? Like, nobody but you knows that. Okay.
No, Erica, I wanted you to say, so the next day I went to the class and I turned that cross upside down just for my roommate.
Just for my roommate.
Right? You were an ally for your roommate.
Not that day. That day I said, those tears, you had to keep them bottled up in your soul. But not even that, right? Like, everybody has their experience. But what I'm wanting to contrast is everybody struggles with being vulnerable, right? The queen of vulnerability is Brene Brown, a white woman, beautiful white woman. Everybody struggles with showing up and being seen and speaking from their soul. And I think that for Black women, especially when you use words, when the word vernacular is just such a particular, because even that language, it brings me back to thoughts of ebonics, thoughts of just sort of like street slang, ideas that are just in the common society that just kind of relate to like the otherness of Blackness. And so there's always this, I don't know about y'all, but I always have sort of an awkwardness, less and less. I'm married to a white man, okay? And so I run in white spaces just as much as I run in Black spaces. But in those white spaces, there's always this this awkwardness of, you know, I can what kind of bullshit might be around the corner. What thoughts and biases might these people be bringing to who I am as a person? And a lot less of this now, but I can remember sitting at brunch with a bunch of Black women, and it was Halloween. And this one of the Black women at the table worked for a company, and a Black secretary came in dressed in a way that this Black woman found like super inappropriate. But what I found interesting about it was that for her, it was inappropriate because society lumps us all together. I was like, let that woman be herself. That's her. You, okay, people are like, all Black people, but like, you can't in your soul be like, she represents me, because she doesn't.
Right.
And so there's, I don't know, I just feel like there's just so many layers to what Black women, Black folk are balancing when we start to talk about just being because that's what vulnerability is, just being ourselves in spaces where we could be rejected.
Absolutely. If I can just for a moment just highlight what you just said about the Black woman coming into the room, and the other Black woman was offended in a way, because it was like this woman was a reflection of all Black women, right? Like, and this is something that we will be talking about in another episode, but that competition that happens, I wonder if that's the underlier, right? Like, we think, or the critique that happens amongst Black women. It's like, because if you're showing up that way, this is how they're going to view all of us. And so it's more a critique instead of a competition. But I know we're going to dive into that more, but it's that piece, right, that we begin to look down upon one another, because we're like, if you're showing up this way, then they're looking at me in that same way, right? And so I think that's something that we will definitely dive into deeper another time, but there's something there. I feel that there's something really palpable that is sitting within that conversation. So I just wanted to bring that to the face.
Right, because it's but what's that?
I was gonna say
but it is true though.
And oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Allie.
It's funny because we're laughing because Erica's in Amsterdam, so we're just a little Zoom connection. But that is true that as a Black community, they lump us together. They do.
Always.
So when a Black person says, no, there's no such thing as racism, then the whole white community, and the whole white community is those who are on that side that there is no racism. They're just like, nope, because this person said there is no racism. So that goes with everyone, instead of just like, no, that was one person. So that is very valid to be like, our individuality is not seen through the eyes of others. It's just not. So for us to be vulnerable as we move through our expressions, our experiences of racism or being shot down or being rejected, it's totally different from each and every person. And so then that's that layer that you're trying to break through what everybody thinks. And then you have the individual, and then you have our gender. Like, there's so many layers to work through on how you're being seen. And then that circles right around to what Demita said, is that you just have to trust yourself. You just have to know who you are. This is how I show up. And I promise you, when you do, then everything around you will start to shift, because you can't get sucked into, this is what the white community thinks. This is what, like, we'll be in this cycle forever, for absolutely ever.
Absolutely.
I'm done talking, Erica. To you now.
Well, no, but listen, that's exactly what I was about to say. There are definitely situations where I've been in where I know that the white people that I happen to be around were just lumping. I had somebody ask me at a friend's house, how do you, this is back in the day when Donald Trump had not been president, and Omarosa was on that that show, your Fired show.
Yes, yes.
Almarosa.
And this human looked me into the windows of my soul, and she said,
I love that.
"Well, how does it feel as a Black woman to have Omarosa on television? Like, is that embarrassing for you?" And I was like, "Well, how does it feel for you as a white woman? George Bush on television, is that embarrassing for you?" Like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? So, I mean, yes, we are lumped in there, but I think that the key when we're talking about supporting Black women
Yes.
is that we can't be the ones lumping y'all.
Yeah.
And like, and to the extent that we are, because it's been our experience that people lump us and we haven't made that separation, this is such a beautiful opportunity to wake up to what we're doing and how we are not allowing other Black women to be vulnerable around us because of what someone else might think, or how we might be making ourselves smaller and invulnerable because of what someone else might think or what effect it might have on the community. It's the more free we let ourselves be individually, the more free other Black women get to be, just as they are.
Just as they are. And I love that. I love what both of you are saying. And I love just that last bit, Erica, so much, because that's why we wanted to, one of the reasons why we wanted to create the She Kings community is because we want to create that space, right? That we can show up for one another and we can be our individual selves and we can be vulnerable. And we can separate ourselves from the sense of that because you're showing up this way, let me back up a little bit. We create this space so that we can support one another and uplift one another in our individuality, right? And so we can say, okay, you show up this way. It is a reflection of me. It is, because we are mirrors at the end of the day, right? But we are our own individuals in the way that we navigate the world. And we are here to allow for the space for us to show up in that way, however that is, so that we can fumble, so that we can make mistakes, quote unquote, make mistakes, so that we can learn, so we can see at the spaces that we desire to grow, we desire to stretch, so that we can, again, be better humans. And to really, when I say better humans, just to be clear, that is us walking in our essence. That is what that is. And so that creating of the space, and I love that we get to do that together. We get to show up as our individual selves, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think if people who tap into the She Kings community really start to embrace the vulnerability, that show up, that let people speak around like their business, give them ideas, like everybody who's involved is going to expand in all the ways. And I see it in every aspect of my life, my relationships, my businesses, money, like everything. Once you settle in and you let go of resistance, because when you don't have vulnerability, you have resistance. Whenever you have resistance, you are literally unplugging yourself from the divine, and then you're cut off from everything. And so, man, letting go of that resistance, being vulnerable, like I promised you, things will shift greatly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. I felt that in my heart, because it when you were saying what you were just saying, the words that came is that the heart longs to be vulnerable. It longs to be seen, to dance, to be free, to be full, to be a mess, to be, just amazing. And, and I would, as keep an eye out, beautiful humans. Ellie was just talking about the community. And this is what we're talking about, creating just a space for your heart to be able to play and to be able to dance with other Black women who are going to encourage you and set you up to be doing exactly what you're meant to be doing on this new earth. Now, I know that we are looking at closing up or wrapping up. And one of the things that we did in the original She Kings that I know we want to keep going is we gave homework after every episode. And so we've been talking about vulnerability. do one of you have a homework, a question
Yes.
for folks to reflect on around vulnerability
Yes.
to close out the show?
Yes. Are we giving 2? Allie, do you have one as well? Are we giving 3?
Well, let me hear what yours is. Let me hear what yours is, because it
maybe
could be the exact same one.
it could be the exact same one. Well, as we all know, in order to change anything, we have to be willing to see it. We have to acknowledge it, right? We have to that requires us to observe. And so my homework is to simply observe yourselves in moments where vulnerability arises and see how you respond. See if you close off from that vulnerability or if you allow yourself to actually lean into it. And if you're willing and if you're ready, lean into that space of vulnerability when it arises. If you're not quite ready, just observe yourself in it. There's nothing to do, and allow yourself to love yourself in it and to say that it is okay how you arrive in that space. That is my homework.
Yes. That was going to be my homework. And then this is just like a little a note to your homework. Like you'll know when those circumstances are, because you're going to have so much anxiety.
Yes.
And you're going to feel like you may just like your heart's going to stop because you're just like, ooh, I could say sorry. I could express. So you'll know what it is. You'll know when it shows up. So you won't be fooled. You won't be fooled by this homework at all. It'll literally punch you. It'll punch you right here
right
in the throat.
Right in the throat.
Right
and it will hit your heart where it's like, oh, yeah. So you'll know.
Absolutely. That's beautiful.
Oh. That is perfect. So that is the homework. Beautiful She Kings. We ask you, as we always do, to please rate, please review, and please find us on Instagram and follow whatever it is you do on Instagram, because we want to be in touch with you.
Yes.
Beautiful. And you can find us each, and we'll have it again in the notes below, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts. We are on YouTube. Our podcast will be, so we're going to be everywhere. And so you can't ignore us. You won't be able to, because we're going to be popping up everywhere, just everywhere you go.
Super vulnerable.
She King.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you will be saying, I am a She King too.
That's right. That's right. All right, everyone. We will be coming back in 2 weeks for another episode. And we will be posting on what that episode is. And it is going to be around energy and how to understand your energy and to create a type and a feel of energy that will align you with more money, with business, with all the goodness that you so desire. So don't miss that one. So we're out.
Peace.
Peace.